There are a few records in MLB history that will never be touched, and one of those is Satchel Paige pitching in the majors at the young age of 59. Regarded by many all-time greats as the best pitcher they ever faced, Satchel Paige is one of the greatest to ever take the mound, despite never given the chance others had. So, let's look back at how great Satchel Paige was.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Satchel Paige was born on July 7, 1906, and this actually wasn't discovered until 1948 when Bill Veeck and Paige's family went to the Mobile County Health Department to obtain his birth certificate. Like many kids during this time, he would play top ball, a variation of baseball where bottle caps were used as baseballs and sticks were used as bats, and he was obsessed with playing. His mother even said he would rather play baseball than eat. And at the age of 12, Paige was sentenced to 6 years in the Alabama Reform School, brought along from his truancy in school and his tendency to steal things. While in reform school, Satchel was taught how to pitch by the Reverend Moses Davis. Davis was a trustee of the school and dedicated long hours to practicing and developing the players. He even struck a deal with a sporting goods store in Montgomery for team uniforms. Paige would be released from the institution in December of 1923, 7 months before his 18th birthday. He would say on his time spent there, "I traded 5 years of freedom to learn how to pitch. They were not wasted years at all. It made a real man out of me." Paige began pitching for semi-pro teams in the area after this, including with his brother on the Mobile Tigers. He also pitched for the Down the Bay Boys, where he had an incident that became part of baseball folklore. It was the 9th inning of a 1-0 game. He was on the mound, and his teammates made 3 consecutive errors, all with 2 outs, to load the bases. In anger, he began stomping on the mound and kicking up dirt. Fans started booing, so he decided to take showing someone up to another level. He called his outfielders in and had them sit down in the infield. And amidst the cheers and jeers from his teammates, he struck the final batter out to win the game 1-0. Paige's Negro League career began on the minor league Chattanooga White Sox, where he was paid $250 a month. From the beginning, word spread that he was special. Local newspapers such as the Chattanooga Times reported on his potential and performance, and as a result, his contract was sold to the Birmingham Black Barons in 1927, where he received $450 a month. In his first few starts, it was clear that Paige threw hard, but he had some control problems, and it became clear in his start against the St. Louis Stars in June that he was still dealing with some maturity problems. Paige incited a brawl when he threw at Mitchell Murray, and Murray charged the mound, and Paige ran away to the dugout. But Mitchell flung his bat and hit Paige above the hip. The police were involved, and headlines read that the game was a near riot. Paige settled down after this, and would finish the year with a 2.39 ERA and a 7-2 record in 10 starts and 20 appearances. And a thing to remember with Negro League stats is that it's impossible to know the true official stats, as the Negro Leagues didn't keep game summaries or box scores. Such as the claims that Josh Gibson hit 800 home runs in his career, it may very well be true, but there's no way to know with complete certainty. Paige would pitch 3 more seasons with the Barons, and using what is known, he compiled a 2.93 ERA in 491 innings, striking out 472, giving him a K/9 of 8.7 and a WHIP of 1.092. There are reports that his 189 strikeouts in 1929 were a Negro League record. He also set the single game record for strikeouts when he struck out 17 against the Cuban Stars in late April, one more than the Major League record of 16 held by Rube Bedell and Noodles Hahn. And just 6 days later, he broke his own record by striking out 18 Nashville Elite Giants. Paige was without a doubt a star at this point, and his appearances in barnstorming events exposed him to a larger audience, and what he did in those barnstorming events made him unforgettable. Paige toured with a barnstorming group led by Babe Ruth, giving him the chance to play against many white major leaguers. And according to Robert Smith, author of The Pioneers of Baseball, in a West Coast game against the Babe Ruth All-Stars, he reportedly struck out 22 major league players, 6 more than the single game record at the time. It was also reported that he never got the chance to face Babe Ruth, as also according to Smith, Ruth seemed to be busy in the dugout every time Satchel was on the mound. Regardless, Paige's talent was transcendent, and people from all walks of life went out of their way to watch him. And as his popularity grew, his earning potential came with it. So much so that R.T. Jackson, the owner of the Barons, began renting Paige to other teams for a few games to bring in a large crowd. And over the next decade, Paige would play just about everywhere. He returned from Cuba early in the spring of 1929 after varying reports of trouble, and after briefly spending time with the Cleveland Cubs, he would join the Pittsburgh Crawfords, playing a huge role in arguably the greatest Negro League teams of all time. The team featured the likes of Josh Gibson, Oscar Charleston, Cool Papa Bell, and many others. And during his stint with the Crawfords, he would pitch 296 innings with a 2.16 ERA, a K/9 of 9.2, and a WHIP below 1, getting selected to the All-Star team in all of those years, except in 1935 when he did not play with the team. Instead, he pitched with an all-white independent team from Bismarck, North Dakota, earning a top salary like he did with the Crawfords. And to see how much Paige loved to pitch, It was with the Bismarck team that he would appear in 29 games in 1 month, another record by him that I don't think we're going to see broken. And after the 1936 season, and extensive exhibition in barnstorming with the likes of Dizzy Dean, Joe DiMaggio and Bob Feller, he went back to the Caribbean, as he was given $30,000 to play in the Dominican Republic, a salary on par with many major leaguers at the time. And as a result of his move to the Dominican, he was barred from going back to the Negro Leagues, so he went to Mexico the following year. And after pitching in Venezuela, he made his way to Mexico, and it was there where the incredible amount of pitching caught up to him. He began to experience pain in his right shoulder, reaching the point that he could barely lift his arm. He was even told by a doctor that he would never pitch again. But after time spent with the Kansas City Travelers, where he played other positions, pitched less, and had professional treatment on his arm, his fastball returned. It wasn't as good as it once was, but then again, he reportedly could reach triple digits. He would play in Puerto Rico in the winter, where he dominated despite walking off the mound one game after seeing a ghost. He would win 19 games and strike out 208 in 205 innings, both records that still stand, as he helped the Guayama Witch Doctors win the league. He then returned to Kansas City, pitching for a team he became synonymous with in the Monarchs. It was during the early 40s that Satchel was earning upwards of $500 per game, and in a year he kept track, he pitched 134 games. He pitched anywhere he could, including in front of 20,000 in Yankee Stadium on opening day in 1941, where he pitched a complete game, which landed him a portrait in Life magazine. He would become an ace for the Monarchs, pitching 439 innings during his 5 seasons with a 2.29 ERA and a K per 9 of 8.1. He would make 3 All-Star teams during this time, and would pitch in the 1942 and 46 Negro League World Series. The Monarchs would win in 42, and Paige appeared in all 4 documented games, pitching 16 innings and striking out 18. Paige was supposed to appear in Game 7 in 1946, but Buck O'Neil believes Paige wasn't there because he was discussing a barnstorming tour with Bob Feller. He went on a 31-city tour featuring Negro League All-Stars, going up against the likes of Phil Rizzuto, Dutch Leonard, and Stan Musial. But bigger than the tour, that year brought one of the most important moments in MLB history and all of American sports, when Jackie Robinson made his Major League debut on April 15, 1947. Major League teams began recruiting other black players, and while Paige was a prime candidate, his age was a major factor. He didn't get a tryout until his 42nd birthday on July 7, 1948, when Bill Veeck, owner of the Indians, brought him in for a tryout. And that was mainly because the Indians were in the midst of a pennant race, and he thought Paige could help. Paige was impressive and signed a contract that day, becoming the 7th black player overall and the first black pitcher in the American League. And just 2 days later, he became the oldest player to debut in the major leagues, where he pitched 2 scoreless innings against the St. Louis Browns. And that decision to bring in Paige and miss a pennant race paid off, as he would pitch great the rest of the year. He would pitch 72.2 innings with a 2.48 ERA and a 6-1 record. The Indians won the pennant and the World Series, where Paige made 1 appearance, giving up no runs in 2/3 of an inning. There were talks of Paige winning Rookie of the Year, but Paige himself said he would reject winning the award. The following year would not be as great. His numbers weren't drastically different, but his 4-7 record didn't help his cause. And with Veeck selling the team in part to help fund his divorce, Paige was released. He went back to barnstorming to help pay the bills, but in July of 1951, he returned to the majors with Veeck after he bought an 80% interest in the St. Louis Browns. His 1951 half season was his worst in the majors, as he compiled a 4.79 ERA, along with his highest whip and lowest ERA plus in his major league career, as he lost 4 games on a 102-loss team. But the following year would arguably be his best. Appearing in 46 games and only starting 6, he would lead the league in games finished, while reaching a career high in innings pitched, wins, strikeouts, and WAR. His efforts earned him a top 20 finish in MVP voting and an All-Star appearance, making him the first black pitcher to make the AL All-Star team. The game was cut short due to rain, and Casey Stengel promised a spot on the All-Star team the next year. And in his final full season in the majors, Stengel made true on his promise, though Paige didn't really deserve it. He finished 3-9 with a 3.35 ERA, and a hits per 9 over a point higher than the previous year, and a K per 9 2 points lower. Veeck sold the team in the offseason, and Paige was released. Over the next decade, Paige was in and out of the game, dealing with the normal problems old age brings, including a stomach problem that almost forced retirement. Paige would go back to barnstorming, along with stints on the Miami Marlins of the International League, aided by Veeck taking control of the team. He also returned to Cuba, pitching for the Havana Cuban Stars, and at the age of 55, pitching with the AAA Portland Beavers. 4 years later would bring Paige one last hurrah, and one of baseball's best moments. Paige applied for a pension from Major League Baseball, but it was discovered that he needed 3 more innings of work to qualify, so he was given the chance by Charles Finley, the owner of the Kansas City Athletics. On September 25th, in front of over 9,000 fans, including several Negro League veterans. At the age of 59, Paige pitched 3 scoreless innings against the Red Sox, sitting on a rocking chair and being served coffee by a nurse between innings. When he came out, the lights dimmed, fans lit matches, and sung the Old Gray Mare to put an end to one of the greatest careers in the history of baseball. Paige would be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1971 by the Negro League Committee. As many noticed, Paige rarely expressed bitterness over being unable to play in the MLB for so many years. Perhaps it was aided by the fact that Paige earned just as much or more than most major leaguers, and was more famous than most. But looking back now, with the many incredible Negro League players who were never given a chance, it reflects most poorly on Major League Baseball and society as a whole. Players from Josh Gibson to Oscar Charleston to Cool Papa Bell could have easily helped any team in the majors if given a chance. And in the case of Satchel Paige, some of the best players to ever play the game echoed that statement. Both Joe DiMaggio and Bob Feller said Satchel Paige was the best pitcher they ever saw, and Hall of Famer Charlie Gehringer agreed with him. And the reason so many were in awe when watching him was his fastball that he could throw anywhere he wanted and was thrown so much harder than anyone during the time. Dizzy Dean said Paige's fastball made his look like a changeup, and just as important, he had great location. One of his teammates on the St. Louis Browns said, "You hear about pinpoint control, but Paige is the only man I've ever seen who really has it. Once he threw me 6 strikes out of 10 pitches over a gum wrapper." And that control can be traced back to the insane amount of hours he spent practicing as a kid. The difference in hard throwers who end up being great is the ability to control, and that was the one thing Paige said he practiced over and over again. And obviously, it ended up paying off. And just looking at his career and the many teams and places he pitched, he seemed to have a natural gift. An estimate made by a magazine estimates that he pitched over 2,500 games in his career. For reference, the Major League records for games pitched is 1,252 by Jesse Orosco. But then again, he was a reliever. Paige often pitched complete games in consecutive days. That same magazine estimates that of the 2,500 games he pitched 300 shutouts and threw 55 no-hitters. Obviously, the argument is that he didn't face the best competition, but in a sense, you could argue Major League players in that time also weren't facing the absolute best competition. One of the biggest what-ifs in baseball is how much of a difference Negro League players would make in the MLB. In looking at the talents of Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, or Paige's counterpart Smokey Joe Williams, it's pretty obvious that they could match the best talent in the game. Satchel Paige's story is an unfortunate one in the sense of how it could have been even more memorable than it already was, but it also shows his resilience. Debut in the majors at the age of 42, after arm injuries and exhaustion, really tells the entire story, and to not only do that, but also continue to pitch in his 60s at high levels adds even more. Pitching 3 scoreless innings in the majors at the age of 59 is a record that will surely never be broken, and that alone shows why Satchel Paige is one of the greatest to ever take the mound, no matter the limitations placed upon him.